And then we're going to get started on our live of our second and third parts of Crime and Punishment. So Ramsey, Ange, Victoria, thank you so much for helping me host this one this time. Welcome, welcome.
You're welcome, Danny.
So I'd like to begin, since all three of you are new to hosting the live show, I would love it if you could introduce yourselves. Tell us a little bit about what channel you have. All of you are booktubers, and then also let us know what your experience with Dostoevsky has been. Ramsey, let's start with you.
Okay, yeah. My name is Ramsey. I run the Rajathon YouTube channel. It's a little harder to search than I thought it'd be initially, but I enjoy talking about books, sci-fi, fantasy, and really getting into nonfiction. Enjoying that quite a bit. And then I like comics and just general everything you can read. I like to read. This is my first Dostoevsky novel, and enjoying it quite a bit.
Wonderful. Victoria, you want to go next?
Sure. I'm Victoria. My channel is A Musical Bookworm. Sorry, I didn't put it on the screen. But this is my first time reading Dostoevsky. Also very new to just Russian literature in general. But I'm loving it. I'm loving it already. So
yeah, thank you. Ange?
Hi, I'm Ange with an E. I have my channel because I discovered BookTube by looking for a book club, and BookTube is even better than that because I get to talk about all these great books with lots of different people. And this is my first piece of Russian literature. I can't even pronounce Dostoevsky's name. That's how new I am to all of this, and I can't believe this book has passed me by in my life. I'm having a great time reading it.
Absolutely. Yes, we all kind of, as we're getting ready today, we kind of talked about that, how in all of our experiences, we've just never had the opportunity. So we're so happy to do that today. And we're going to jump right in because we have a lot to talk about. I mean, we covered 2 full parts of this book, and boy, they were packed full of interesting things to talk about. So we're going to jump right in. And of course, something fun first. So let's ask ourselves or describe our first impressions or first overall impressions of the story thus far, but in 5 words or less.
I'll go first.
Yeah.
What the heck's going on? I have no idea.
That's great.
So true. So true. Ramsey, did you have 5 words?
I'd been thinking it. I don't know if I can pin it down to 5 words, but he's trying to tell heart himself. So
very nice. Very nice.
If you put a hyphen, Victoria? I think that makes it 5.
Yeah, put words together. Victoria, how about you?
I'm going to go with ambiguous motives and scary thoughts.
Oh, very nice. I cheated a little bit. I did have an extra word, but it's an article, so that's not technically a word. But I did cleverly mystified antagonist parlays with Columbo. Because that's how I felt. Like, I was so drawn to that section that I was like, oh my gosh, he's so clever, but he's also very confused. And he's like fighting with this guy, but like in a very conversational way. It was like tet for tet. That whole scene was just amazing. So that's like the only thing I was like honed in on while reading these last 2 sections. So awesome. So yeah, as we're going through, of course, everyone in the comments, please feel free to add your 5 words and contribute to any of the questions coming through. Love to keep this as a full roundtable discussion. So everyone comments and analyzing of the book is totally, bring it on. We have Shelly here has a 5 words for us. Stay out of the trap. Ooh, that's good. I like that one. I find we see that a lot where we see his internal monologue a lot where he goes, they know, and then he goes, no, they don't. I'm too smart for this. They know. It's just like so back and forth. So it's very interesting to see that. So wonderful. Okay, so let's jump into the first question that we have prepared for you all. And Ramsey, you're going to bring us into the forefront of the discussion today with talking to us a little bit about how money plays a role in the novel. You know, how does Radia really handle or interact with money?
So my assumption was he committed the murder because he needed money. Money was his driving focus. Money was his driving force. And then as the book progresses, you see that money isn't as important to him as you think. So I dug in and kind of my math brain said, well, how much is that worth? Like what, his mother gives him 45 rupees. He steals from her. I can't remember what was in the wallet, but it was around 50 rupees, I believe. And then the jewelry was worth quite a bit. But so in 1860s, you're looking at a ruple was probably around $1.3 back then. So if you did like straight US exchange rate, and then if you go into what that'd be worth today, it'd be about $20. So you imagine 1 ruple is about $20. And then kopecks are, from what the internet was telling me, is like cents. So he's basically, when he's like, oh, I gave her 60 kopecks or whatever. And I found a really cool little breakdown, and it was back in 1869 in St. Petersburg. Here were some prices. A pair of chickens or ducks were 60 kopecks. A pair of geese was 1 ruple and 30 kopecks. Cabbage, 15 kopecks. A bundle of greens, 15 kopecks. Potatoes, about 70 kopecks. So it kind of lets you know about where that money kind of did. So when he gave Marmeladov's wife, I believe, 30 kopecks in the beginning, it wasn't much. But when he gave her 25 rupees later, it was a couple $100.
Wow.
So, you're looking at he's had money from his mom. Like his mother only had like $120 pension for the month. So she was giving him a ton of money out of her pension, and he was just throwing it away. And so I really looked at how he interacted with the money, and I'm like, he just, at one point he acts like money's really important. At one point he acts like money's not important. And I don't know how big that, we bring it up a lot in the money. But I don't know if it's even important with Raskolnikov. Like if he feels money's important, because he didn't mind living in squalor, but then he had the motivation. Like at one point I thought maybe he was just mad at the pawnbroker because she was Jewish, but then we never get any other anti-Semitic thoughts from him.
Right.
And so, sorry, my kid set off the alarm. But I just don't know what the money issue was cool.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's interesting too how so his giving money away is very frivolous. He's just like he gets money for nothing and then he gives it away. So you could theorize that because he hasn't earned that money, he doesn't care. So he'll just give it away. But then his friend, and I'm not even going to try to butcher his name here. The other R name, Rams something. He gives him an opportunity to earn money, and he puts it down and says no, and he walks away. So it's so interesting. Ange and Victoria, do you guys have any other thoughts on that? Like, what is your first impression of that? Like, why does he, like, in every respect, like he gives the money to the police officer to help the woman get a taxi. He gives Mardalov's family all of that money. He there's another instance where he just gives somebody money, like, oh, here you go. Or he pays for the tea when he talks to the clerk. It's just, he's just shelling it out everywhere, but doesn't even want to earn it either. So it's interesting.
No, I feel that he doesn't have any value in money. That's not where he's coming from, and he sees everybody as needing this money more than he does because he's quite happy to be living without it. But then he does seem shameful when his family see him living like that. And I think he does have this empathy about him, because in the first couple of chapters I thought he was going to be quite narcissistic and whatever, but he's not. He's quite empathetic with people, and he gives to people. And I think that scene when he gives the money for the funeral, and then Sonia comes back to him and realizes where he lives. She says something like, "I didn't think you'd live here." She was expecting something grander. So I just don't think that money is of value to him. He sees it as to value to other people.
Well, it's interesting. Even though he gives money to Marmeladov's family, I don't think it's altruistic. I think it's selfish still. I think he's just trying to make himself feel better about what he did, and he's giving the money as like kind of an atonement to his own. Like, there's this weird conversation with, I think, him and the daughter, where he's like, do you love me? Like, he has some questions about, like, what do you think about me? You know, I remember a passage where he was like, do you love me now that I've done this for you? I think his motives with money are more selfish, and I think that when he receives the money from his family, I don't think he values the giver either. So if he doesn't value the giver of the money, and like doesn't really understand the sacrifice that it takes for his mother to give him money, then he's gonna just use it maybe unwisely and just see it as a tool rather than see it as like a way of his mom to be like, I want to take care of you. That's kind of how I'm seeing his relationship with money at the moment.
Yeah, I agree. And it seems like even when he takes the possessions from the pawnbroker, he's not like, they reveal that there was like 1,500 rubles there, and he just didn't even think to look for the money. He only took the possessions. So to me, the act wasn't even about money. It was almost as if he overheard this idea of what could be done to this pawnbroker, and then took it upon himself to do it, so no one else could.
He's very prideful.
Yes. Almost as if he kind of puts himself above others, because he believes that he knows how it's supposed to all interact, and how dare Dunya marry this man to provide for him, because he is above that. He doesn't need to be provided for, because he knows what needs to be done, which kind of bleeds into the next question, which jumps right on into that conversation between our we're just going to call him the policeman, because I'm not going to, again, make any names not pronounced correctly. Mr. Columbo, we'll call him Mr. Columbo. But the article that Radya had written months prior to the crime, when he was a law student, has then been published in a periodical, of which Columbo has seen and brings up during this conversation. And a lot of conversation was talked in the Voxer group about the idea of this article being discussed, and whether or not Columbo is pointing out certain things to catch Radya in his actions. There's a little bit of a debate there, thinking that, for one, we really know an internal monologue of Radya, right? So we don't know if Columbo actually thinks that this is something that was a preemptive strike against this pawnbroker. But to us as the reader, because we're seeing Radya's internal monologue, and we're seeing him go, he knows, he keeps winking at me, he knows. We then, our first assumption is he does know. And that's why he's asking these questions. I'm on the fence. The way that I read that section came all the way down to motives. Because any good detective, when a crime has happened, the first thing that you have to understand is the motive.
Mhm.
Why did someone do this? Because that is going to lead me to the criminal. So you always have, like, in a crime of passion, it's the lover, right? So in this case, it's all about the money. However, when we see, and I think it's very clear, when they walk into that room, it's not just Columbo that's there. It's Columbo and the clerk. And the clerk had a previous conversation with Radia talking about what he would do if he had done it and what he'd do with the money. So my assumption is this clerk got the heebie-jeebies. Like, this guy is cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. He's talking about what he would do with this stuff. He goes and has a fine conversation with this detective. This detective, who is very smart, if you are really reading into the way he is answering questions, he probably sought out, who is this guy? Oh, he was a law student. Let me take a look at what his stuff is. And he found that article, and he read that article, and he went, this is very interesting, in all Columbo like ways, because from what Melissa in our Boxer group mentioned, that actually the Columbo, so Peter Falk's Columbo, is a representation of this same detective. So this is where it all began. So I really see that he is, like, asking all of the right questions to say. So tell me, expand on your article. You mentioned X, Y, and Z. Tell me more. And he does it in such a sly way that a criminal like Radia is going to do nothing but boast because he thinks he's gotten away with it at this point. He's fearful and he sees him winking and he thinks he knows. But then when he asks a question, no, of course he doesn't. I am too superior to him to be able to be, caught by such a man. How would he know? It's just a simple article. And he actually points out a few pieces that he's like, oh, of course he would take that from my article. That it didn't mean that, but it would mean that to him. It was just such an amazing, like, this section was the book for me. I was like, I would read that, like, if I think about it, I just did the reread tag. If I was to reread something, it would be that section. That was a Columbo episode. That is the portion of a Columbo episode where you go, he knows. Columbo knows that is the criminal, and now he's got to find his evidence. So there's a few sections that really stuck out to me that I felt were very interesting. And this particular one, I think, will kind of lead into, and you're going to be talking about mental illness later on. But there's a quote here that talks about environment. So it says here, and I believe that it's, I think it's the detective that says this, but he says, environment means a great deal in crime. I can confirm that. And what he is referring to is the fact that, the environment creates crime. So when we have, say, for instance, in a situation where there are several people that are down on their luck and they're living in destitution, they turn to crime to make their situation better. So that's a little bit of that environmental piece, but also leads into the mental health piece as well, because your environment creates your mental health as well. So we'll come back to that a little bit later. But the main piece of that article that I think we all kind of referred to in the motivations piece is where he mentioned ordinary versus extraordinary. And it says, the ordinary must live in obedience and have no right to transgress the law, because they are, after all, ordinary. While the extraordinary have the right to commit all sorts of crime and in various ways to transgress the law, because in point of fact, they are extraordinary. that is how you had it, unless I am mistaken. That's where I was like, oh snap, he knows. He knows it was him, and he is going to get him in a net, and he is going to find the evidence, and he is going to nab him. So, I mean, what was your take on this section?
Yeah, it was one of my favorite sections too, Danny. I'm right there with you. I was riveted to the page. A lot of the more like philosophical conversations, like while they take a lot of time to like read and kind of digest, like they're like the best parts of the book. They're so interesting. I do think that if you look at the book through nihilism, which is something that you and Christy talked about in like the first live stream of like nihilism was something that touched his life, that touched Dostoevsky's life, right? So it's definitely just expounding upon that nihilism idea that there's there should be a separation of like emotion and thought, and that we have to elevate the extraordinary people, and then there's the little people, right? So there's just that mentality that can be so harmful. And I think Dostoevsky, what I assume, not having read the book, I think he's gonna like deconstruct that, right, and just show how that mentality is harmful. So I'm very curious to see where that goes forward. But that's how I saw it, as like a little nihilism discussion for a moment.
Absolutely. There's so many, as Laura mentions, there's so many ways you could have read that section. And I think too, like leading into your interpretation of the characters, I think it was Jenna in the Voxer group, she had asked like, who's everyone's favorite character? And it was not until up to this portion of the book where I was like, nah, everyone's okay. Like, I'm not really like into anybody. But once I read this section, I was like, Columbo all the way. And here I thought it was going to be that Nikov, the more superior ranking officer that had kind of been introduced in that one scene where he had to go to talk about his unpaid debt. I thought he was going to be like this Sherlock character that was just going to come out of the woodwork and like solve the crime. And here it's this guy who we at first didn't take very seriously. We were just like, whatever. And now I'm just like, I want to know everything you know. Yeah, I mean, I could reread that section over and over again. It's just crazy. So we have a lot of comments here. So let's kind of jump into those for a moment. So we have from DT here. I'm interested how Dostoevsky gradually pulls out the motive. Started out as killing for greater good, now into individuals and own morals, and it keeps changing. And I think it was Allie from our Voxer group had mentioned the greater good for mankind. And I think that really goes into the idea of that ordinary versus extraordinary as well, because the extraordinary are limiting that need to sacrifice, because they're making the decision on, well, like he was saying, like Newton and Napoleon, they're just getting rid of the competition, mm-hmm. so that they can, show how grand they are. And I'm thinking, what? This is like Hunger Games. Like, we're just gonna start like taking people out, and like now I'm the supreme being. So I thought that was interesting, because he doesn't seem maniacal to me. He just seems very matter of fact. And what are your thoughts about that? So like his kind of thought process, and this kind of leads into Ange. our question about mental illness. Not that, mental illness means that you are smart or not smart, but it's almost like, does he really think that he is just above everything?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think he believes that he has planned it correctly. He had his plan laid out. He knew what he was going to do, and he did in all essences get away with it. There was no witnesses. There's, as he believes, there's no evidence, and the one thing he thought was evidence was sock. And as he was in his delirium, he was like, "I need the sock. I need the sock. Give me the sock back. I need the sock back." But he's so proud of himself that he's saying, "Oh, well, this is how I would do it." He basically wrote O.J. Simpson's book in the bar with the clerk, and then he went through and he's like, "Well, he's trying to catch me in this lie." And what I thought was really, really interesting, he was trying to catch him in a lie. He said, "Oh, well, when you went by to go pawn that item, did you see the painters?" And he stops. He's like, wait a minute. He's trying to get me here. He's trying to figure out what I'm doing. No, there were not painters there that day, but he didn't know that there was supposed to be a painter there. But then he also knows that his buddy who's been helping him spoke about the painter being the one that was originally thought to be the criminal. And so he's like, I've got to keep all this straight in my head on what I should know, what I shouldn't know, and what situations I should have been in, shouldn't have been in. And then he has the greatest alibi to say, I was really sick. I don't think he planned to be sick, but being sick, he has this alibi that says, I'm sorry, I was just, I didn't know what was going on. I don't know, I randomly got up and started walking, but yeah, he's so proud of himself. He can't keep from saying, hey, well, this or that or this. I kind of told you guys I'd listened to, I think it was a TED Talk, and there was a lady, she was talking about men and women's intelligence. And there's generally women are more intelligent on average, but men have very highs and very lows. And so, but they also have very high and very low mental capacity. So she said, the reason we have Albert Einsteins is because we have Jack the Rippers. And, it was interesting to see that very high intelligent people could go in and then become psychotic. And a lot of times it's because they do away with their empathy. And, at sometimes he's very empathetic. Then other times, I don't think he's regretted once murdering the pawnbroker and his sister. Nope. But, he is worried about a girl that might get raped. I think that was what he was trying to prevent. And then all of a sudden he's like, you know what? Never mind. Let her get raped. It's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
So.
And it almost seemed like in that particular moment, it's because they weren't paying enough attention to him. They weren't grateful for him pointing that out. They were just like, yeah, okay, whatever, dude. We're okay, we'll follow her. And then he's just like, well, fine. If you don't think it's that big of a deal, then fine. Just don't. I'm just nothing then. I feel like that was the reaction. Instead of continuing to do something good, he was just like, fine. I'm not, my opinion doesn't matter. And it's like, dude, calm down. But yeah, the point about his illness, our detective brings that up. From the article, he actually writes, yes, sir, and you maintain that the act of carrying out a crime is always accompanied by illness. Very, very original, but as a matter of fact, what interested me was not the part of your article, but the certain thought that tossed it in the end, which brings us into that ordinary versus extraordinary. So, Ange, you want to kind of take it from there as far as how mental illness may play a role here? Oh, are you muted?
Mm-hmm. She's muted. Mm-hmm.
Oh no.
Can't hear you.
Yeah. Yep, do that. Technical difficulties, that's okay. So we have so Christy mentions here too, he's trying to live by his intellectual code, but he can't resist helping people on impulse. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense because he's very impulsive when he wants to add empathy or to help somebody, but he always seems to backtrack. He always seems to go, oh, but actually no, I don't. I think he does that with his sister as well, where he will say he was very detestable to her marriage, and then he thinks about it and he's like, actually, what is my opinion? And then when he speaks to her, he goes, no, I still don't agree with it. Oh, you know what, whatever, do what you want. He's so impulsive in his ideas that, yeah, Christy, definitely an impulsive person. Angie, can you
hear me now?
Yes, ma'am. Okay, so yeah, bring us into our topic of mental illness.
I was going to say, mental illness definitely plays a big part in this book, and mental illness, before it was even being discussed, some of the concepts that are written about around the personality, Freud wasn't even born, I think, when these were being wrote about. So it shows how ahead of its time it was. And we're getting a snapshot of his illness at the moment, his anxiety. They talk about him being a monomaniac, which is an obsession with one thing. And the doctor, who seems to have taken an interest in him, discusses that with his friend, who I call Vic, for want of a short name from. And they have that discussion that his friends actually went to the doctor to say he's obsessive, he's like this. And then there's a reference to this is why he left university, because he was having these episodes. So it isn't something that is insular to this one thing. This is a thing that's been going on for quite a while. We're just seeing the snapshot of how it's affected him now, and he does seem to sort of withdraw into himself. So he does these things and then he withdraws into himself. And he also has signs of sort of a split personality, which is when Ramsey was saying he can sort of be in one situation and act in two completely different ways for it. I find it interesting. There was a part of the book where I don't know the rest of the story or whatever, but his doctor's actually got, if he's ever put in front of a judge, his doctor has said he's obsessed with certain things, and the doctor tells his friend, you shouldn't have been talking about the painters and your theory about how the thing was left in the flat, because he's obsessed with that and he doesn't know whether that's reality. And I just thought the doctor's going to get him off by saying he'll tell you whatever you want to hear, but it's just theory and thought, because he's such an intelligent man. He's playing with you. He doesn't understand his own reality. It never really happened to him. It's all going on in his head. So I think the mental illness, it'll be what his defense is. Mm-hmm. And I don't think he's going to like that, because he doesn't want to be seen in that way. He wants to be seen as the extraordinary man. The extraordinary man's in control of everything.
That's an interesting theory, because I remember reading that. I remember reading those pieces where the doctor was talking, but that didn't connect for me. I know there was, and didn't someone too bring up that they found the earrings behind the door, and that's how they put it all together of the murderer came down, hid behind the door. When that happened, I was like, oh my gosh, he's gonna get caught. He's going to get caught, and it's going to be in some grandiose way where something so simple that no one thought of is going to be figured out. And yeah. So going back to your thought process of his mental illness, we have him and his friend who are both students, and both of them are kind of in the same situation where they're no longer students. How do those two people compare, do you think?
I think that they compare really well, and this is just my theory. I think that there's a lot of pairing in these books of two people in similar situations, and they're both on different paths. The sister and Sonia are the same. They're both on the same path, and they're doing the same thing. As in, one is a prostitute, one is potentially going to marry a man for money. So they're living the same sort of lives on different paths, and it shows the difference, I think, between the class system more than anything else in that. But he does seem to split things, and you see a mirror of what's going on. So that's why I think his friend as well is the mirror image of, if you weren't mentally ill, this is who you would be. He's more vivacious, he's outgoing, and when his family come, the more attracted is maybe not the right word, but the more sway towards him, and the life he has compared to the brother and son.
That's really smart, because Dunya and Sonia sound alike, and they're the two together. And then Raskolnikov and his friend, who also has a name that starts with R and is very similar, and they're both students. That is an amazing connection. I love that. I don't pick up on those things right away. So thank you so much for bringing that. I'm gonna be like, now I'm gonna be paying attention to that. That's awesome. That's awesome. Does anyone else have any other ideas or theories on that portion of the reading, like the motivations, the mental illnesses, his inner monologue even?
I was just going to say, Ange, I think that's a great point about the pairings of the characters and how we see foils of extremes. I think that is definitely all over the book. And I know I'm going to talk about the family in a little bit, but I even see that with the two families involved. So that's fascinating.
Yeah, let's jump right into that, Victoria. Family dynamics, what role does the family play, and how do we understand that as it impacts our main character? What does that mean to us?
So going off of the pairings, right? So we have his family. We've now met his mother and sister, and when we were reading the letter that was written to him, I think did the mom or the sister write it? I can't remember now.
The mom, I believe.
The mother, yep.
Okay. So when we were reading that letter with him, we saw his internal reactions of like caring about his family. He wants the best for his sister. He's worried that's not happening. So when we're reading the letter, we see that. When he sees them in person, he's annoyed by them. He's kind of like, you're in my way right now. He's not respectful to them. And they haven't seen each other in 3 years, right? So like this has been a while, and it's not a happy reunion. It's kind of awkward a little bit. And then contrasting, he's helping this other family who he just met, right? He's giving them money. He's giving them the money from his own mother to this other family. And so it's just really interesting how he can separate his own feelings from like how he's trying to follow his intellectual code, right? We were talking about that earlier too. It's like he's trying to sever himself from his family a little bit so that he can achieve his moral intellectual code that he's wanting to follow. So I see them, the two pairings of the mother and the sister, and then the Marmeladov's family, I see them as like in direct contrast.
So kind of like the pairings, as Ange was talking about, how there's always the mirror image and how they're on different paths, but all kind of associated with this main character. Okay. I almost felt as if his reaction was so severe because it wasn't on his terms. So he was surprised that they were there. So it wasn't his, like he didn't invite them or know that they were coming. So it wasn't on his terms. So that was where the annoyance came into play.
Yeah.
I saw Donya was looking at him and really noticing a change in him too. So it could be a situation where he realized that there's not a lot of secrets that he has from his family, that his mother and his sister may know him so much better than the people he feels that he's convinced that he's this person he's not. They it's like the was it Christ goes back to his hometown and they're like, that guy's not the son of God, so the people that know you best are the people that are able to kind of see through your BS. And so he may be worried that that will happen as well.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great point too. Yeah, definitely.
And I think it was in our Voxer group where someone had mentioned, and I'm trying to remember, I think it might have been Melissa, where she had mentioned the whimsy in Radia, where he's kind of like a whimsical, he's kind of like all over the place. And then his mother even refers to him as like a capricious character where, she knows him because when he was 15, he was this, that, and the other thing. And that irritated him. He was like, stop it. Don't tell my friends that I'm that, he did not like that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I was kind of taken aback on his reaction to his family there, considering his reaction after he read the letter. It was it almost seemed like a polar opposite.
Mm-hmm. And his sister is also very opposite from him. Like his sister has been described to us so far as this like nice stand-up moral lady, and like everybody likes her, people fall in love with her when they just meet her for the first time. We see that with the his friend, and it makes you wonder, like, okay, they were both raised in the same family, they're two very different people, like why are they so different?
Mm-hmm. We have one of the DT mentions the contrast being between rural and urban, which does, I believe that, because like you were saying, between Sonia and Dunya, you have this, immoral character with, prostitution, and then you have Dunya, who's an angel, and, oh no, and so that's a good point. How does it change because of the environment again? So that's that same topic. How does your environment create these things for you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Very nice.
because we would call that the nature versus nurture environment sort of dynamic, and we talk about it every day because it's become everyday language. But back when this was being written, this was new thoughts, sort of ahead of his time, that he was picking all of these pieces out of what was happening in society. Is it the people or is it the situations that they are in? So he was going into new territory, and on things that now we take as granted in Psych 101. This is what you learn.
Right. And I don't know if anyone remembers when he first meets I think it's Peter. It goes by Peter, the fiance. When he comes and visits, he goes into this long kind of monologue about how there's fires everywhere and riots and all of these things happening, and it's like a political it's kind of saying, hey, there's a lot of stuff happening right now. Like, we have people that are unhappy, people that are destitute, people that are trying to make change. And it's almost as if Dostoevsky has created characters that represent the climate. So this Peter, who is a person of consequence, is someone who is higher in society, is still reflecting on the fact that there are things wrong. There are things wrong here. And you're sitting here and you're upset about your mother coming, and she's giving you all this money and she's coming from nothing, and you sit here and you could be doing something, and there's all these things happening, and you just sit here and you do nothing, and you're upset with me because I'm trying to give your family a better, that was such an interesting piece, which was very small, but I feel gives you a good idea of what Dostoevsky was doing here. And that was shining a light on the fact that there is there's something wrong in this society, and people need to look at it. People need to take a look and do something about it.
But then it's the same when he was engaged to the landlord's daughter, and they talk about her being plain. She was an invalid. She was all these things that a wife of his shouldn't be. His mother talks about that. But that was what drew him to her, that she was the underling and he was going to help her. But that's exactly what the fiance of Donya is. He believes that he's going to be her benefactor. So there's the mirror image there of them both being actually in the same situation at the different levels. And maybe that's why he then thinks, I don't want my sister to be seen in that way. My sister isn't someone's underling. She is sort of my sister. And I think he does appear to love his sister quite deeply.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All very, very, very interesting pieces. Now, last time we had our live show, we ended with predictions. What is this next section going to bring us? What do we think is going to happen? Now, when you think on what your predictions were from last time, did any of those come to fruition? Did things that you predict happen or not happen? Tell me a little bit about that. Who wants to go first?
I don't think my predictions worked out, because I thought I was going to read something that was just about him and the murders, and that he was going to be sort of the criminal psychopath sort of thing. And it's turned into some sort of family drama, all of these different societal issues being played out in a really good detective story, I think, is what it's going to, well, I hope it's going to turn out to be in the next section. So my prediction wasn't played out from the last show.
Yeah, my prediction would be that there was like going to be this big like shutdown where he's like trying to figure out how to stay away from it, and it like part 2 for me was a little boring, where it was mostly him being ill and everybody just kind of talking. But I think part 4, it's going to get more into the intellectual, mental, like cat and mouse game, and then he's going to ruin his sister's engagement, and eventually she just ends up marrying the doctor, because I like the doctor.
I don't like the doctor.
You don't like the doctor?
Ooh.
I don't trust the doctor.
Oh. Victoria, any of your predictions come true?
I don't know that I made any predictions, but going forward from here, I'm wondering if this new character, Srigadilov, who we met at the end of part 3, I'm wondering if he's going to play into like how Radia gets caught, maybe, or like his downfall. I don't know. I'm very curious to see what this new character, his role in the story, because Dostoevsky kind of built up the suspense to introduce him into Radia's life. So maybe he's like the key to everybody figuring out what's actually going on. I don't know.
Oh, one more thing. I'm predicting it now. I bet Radia confesses to Sonia.
Ooh, that's a good prediction.
Okay.
Yeah. I think the only prediction that I really had was with Moldalatov, or whatever, the official. I really didn't think things were going to go well for him, and yeah,
No, they didn't.
So that was sad, but I was not surprised at all. The only thing that was really was interesting about that section, and now after having this conversation, I'm feeling like I understand it a little bit better, because Ange, as you're talking about these pairings, the way that we find out about Marv's demise is Radia is standing at a bridge, and this woman just leaps off in the attempt to commit suicide, and he's like just nothing, no feeling, nothing. He's just watching, I'm like, oh, that's terrible. Like, we don't even hear any internal monologue. He's just watching this happen and nothing. No, it's just like apathetic, whatever. Watches the police get her out, she, and revive her and whatnot. And then he turns around and finds his friend, who he's literally just met, gets run over, and he is absolutely taken aback. He rushes, oh, hospital, I'll pay, the doctor, and like helps him come up to like, he is just distraught. So it's like that pairing, like, here's one person that just, suicide, whatever, and then this person that I just met, oh, I need to take care of this situation. So that was so interesting to me, and I it, like, lingered a little while, and it's not until this conversation where I was like, that must be what Dostoevsky was thinking, is to pair, to always have a pairing of situations.
Well,
So now I feel like
oh,
I'm going to be looking at that a lot more as I read through.
he went to the bridge with suicidal tendencies, and then he watched that woman jump, and then it was like, all of a sudden, it was all about being alive and making sure that this person lived. And it was like, he had those thoughts, but he's just completely turned. And he has now this obsessive thought, like, he goes from one obsessive thought to the next, and it's like nothing else around him is in there, and it sort of like happens within a second, I think, that he decides not to jump, and then he's faced with what he's faced with.
And you mentioned the dual perspectives. They say that Marmeladov looked like he jumped under the horses. Like, even though he was drunk, the driver said, I thought he was fine, and then he felt like he jumped. So maybe the girl and Marmeladov were both committing suicide, and the different ways that was dealt with.
Yeah. And so Christy's making a great point here. I keep referring to Radia's internal monologue. He doesn't actually have one. Oops, I just missed it. And it's because he's speaking out loud. He's giving us his thoughts. I guess that's what I'm referring to. So thank you, Christy. That's a very good point. We don't actually have his internal thoughts. It's his external thoughts that he is giving us. So thank you for that. So predictions into the next section. And Ramsey, you kind of already gave us a few, but does anyone else have any other like predictions for this next section? I know Ange too, you had mentioned a few. What do you think, Victoria?
I was just thinking about maybe if something happens to his close family, what if his sister gets killed, or like his mom gets killed, and then he has to like deal with that emotionally. I don't know. I'm thinking a lot about his emotional side, and how that can, while he's trying to suppress it, like the different ways that Dostoevsky could like make it come to the surface.
Mm-hmm.
That's just a big part of what seems to be going on inside of him, is him just like pushing aside any emotions he has. So I don't know, maybe something bad's going to happen to the sister, or totally guessing.
Yeah, and it seems like his friend, the student friend, I can't say his name, but
Vic.
Yeah, he seems to have a crush on the sister, and I feel like those two, in some way, may kind of
A little
have
romance.
something. Yeah, but I don't think that he's going to like that. I don't think he wants anyone to be happy. I think he just is very involved in his giving his opinions on everyone's.
I think it'll be very Freudian if she does, because I think she sees them as being very similar to her brother, or what our brother should be, even though the situation he's living in. That a little bit of romance, I think, with them. Yeah. And I don't trust the doctor, so I've got my eye on him. It was when he started saying that he was quite new to his profession, he didn't have many patients yet. And I thought, is he using them as some sort of test subject? Is he sort of hanging around and pushing some of the buttons to see what he'll actually do? So is he going to try and manipulate things as they go along the way? That's why I don't trust the doctor.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of people suspect him because of his interactions with each of them. Like the clerk, I think the clerk is very leery of him just because of the really weird conversation they had at tea. And I think the doctor is very suspicious of him because there's a lot of times where you'll read and all of a sudden it'll just say like that the character kind of just like did one of these, like, and then it just keeps going and you're like, okay, but are they suspecting him or they just think he's weird? Like, it's so, I think everyone thinks he did it, but they're not sure. And it's kind of one of those things where you don't want to accuse someone of something because it would just be poor taste.
I think they've been quite sensitive about his illness. I think they know that he's ill. They know that he does these things, like he runs off into the street. The maid Natalia, she seems to be there and sort of keeping an eye on him, but they're all quite sensitive and want to look after him, and everything like that. So yeah, it's a bit like, did he do it or no, he didn't.
I think
No,
it's like
it's
the
not.
idea of we see him as the type of person that would do it, but his alibi is good enough that we don't think he did it.
Yeah, he's charming enough for them to think, no, it's not him.
Yeah, and that telltale heart idea where, because he keeps going back to that hole with the wallpaper, and I keep thinking to myself, is there going to be something there that he has missed every single time he goes over there? Like, he even said, oh, is there a chain that got caught on the, and every time he goes in there, I'm like, there's nothing there, dude. Like, leave the hole alone. And then I'm in the back of my head, I'm like, but what if there is? And it's just like, yeah, he's going to get himself. He is going to catch himself because he's going to let it out of the bag. And I totally, yeah, Ramsey, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think he's going to totally confess to Sonia. But to the reader's mind, is she a criminal as well? So what would it matter to her? Would they be in cahoots together then? Because she's a prostitute and he is a killer, and
Yeah, she has no social standing to be to accuse him.
Exactly. So yeah.
And one thing we didn't talk about, he goes back to the apartment and acts super weird and makes himself like super known to the porter, to the people who are trying to get the home ready. I mean, he's like standing in the room like, this is where I did this. This is where I did this. Oh, okay. Yeah.
This is a telltale sign for the police now. They hang around places where things have happened for you to go back.
Yes. That's what I was thinking. I was like, yeah, the killer always goes back to the scene of the crime. And here you are. Where's the blood? And they're like, what blood? How did you know there's blood here? Like,
it's very Macbeth. His obsession with blood reminds me of Lady Macbeth.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yes.
That's great.
And then Victoria, you bring up our caddy, or what is it? Arkady Ivanovich, whatever that word is. Who is this guy? Do we have any predictions? Does anyone have any predictions? Those of us who have not read past part 3, any predictions on who this guy is? Because he just kind of came out of nowhere.
Yeah, where did he come from? Like, all of a sudden, strange man. Who called him murderer? Like, I don't know.
Oh yeah, who was that too? That was a different person, right? Who called him murderer?
I think it's this guy.
No.
Because at first it was just someone in the shadows, and then
it's I think he said it's the same man. It's the same man's come back.
Well, DT actually said that he thought that Roger was hallucinating that guy.
Yeah.
Oh.
Like, because he was standing in the apartment while he was like sleep, like in his kind of lucid state.
What if it's his conscience or something?
Yeah. Oh.
But they all live so close. They all live so close together, and they're sort of in and out of their own space. And some of them, the flats are alleyways to get into, or corridors to get into other people's apartments. There's just so many people around, and he never seems to lock his door.
Yeah. Here's one. What if he is a complete hallucination? What if this new character is just a complete hallucination? And he is going to have these conversations with this guy who knows he did it. But it's actually, like you said, Ramsey, it's his conscience. It's like a hallucination
And then
of himself.
he confesses to his hallucination and someone overhears him.
Oh.
Oh, man.
I like this theory.
I can come up with some wild theories.
Yeah. Yeah. The one thing that I don't like that happens in books, and I can't imagine it happening in this one just because of the way that this is already going, but I don't like when you get through an entire book and the whole thing was a hallucination. Like none of it actually happened. It was just some guy's
Like
dream.
it was all a dream.
Yeah.
It's like Dallas
We don't
all
want
over
a
again.
saint elsewhere here. We're not into that kind of thing.
We need some
Agreed.
reality. Some of it has to be based in reality.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh boy. Okay, so we are at our hour mark. We did such a good job at keeping on task. So again, I want to give a humongous thank you to Ramsey, Ange, and Victoria for jumping in and hosting with me today and helping me with these conversation starters. So thank you, the three of you, so much. I truly appreciate you helping today.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Next time around, we are going to be on a Monday night. So that is going to be 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. And that will be with Christy again, as well as Stephanie from Miss Richards Reads. I do have one additional opening. So if there is anyone else that would like to join that host group, please do let me know. This one's kind of comes up quite quick. It is actually, what is it, next Monday? So a little less than 2 weeks away. And we'll kind of jump in from there. So if anyone is interested in joining that group, just let me know. And that will be for parts 4 and 5. So almost done with this guys. It's going to be quite interesting. I feel like the next 2 parts are going to be quite impactful. So yeah.
Oh yeah.
Will you be a missus by then, Danny? Your wedding.
I will. Yeah.
Have a lovely wedding day.
If it all happens, yes, I will have a new name in the next one. So yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, we have a Canadian Thanksgiving. Ay. Okay, well, thanks everyone for joining us. Thanks again. If you have any questions or if you aren't already in the Voxer group, let me know. I can get you in for the final parts. And we'll kind of take it from there. But thank you everyone so much for joining. And thank you again, you three, for helping. So much fun.
Had a great time.
I had a blast.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.